2. It's been just over 24 hours since everything came to a halt. I feel that I need time to pause and clear my thoughts and take a few notes. I'm not sure what happened. It feels like the world has come to a complete stop. I came across a grocery store yesterday. The shelves were empty. I suspect a solar flare, or maybe an EMP from one of the various nations or terrorist groups that want to see our country in ruin. It's not very likely that I'll find out the truth in my lifetime. I'm moving slow and careful. The miles are not passing quickly at all. I can't afford any mistakes, and getting to Alpha is going to take much longer than I expected. I'm headed for our group's rally point, Alpha, about 5 miles on the other side of Fordtown. With any luck, I'll be able to gather some intel, resupply, and continue on to one of the base camps. Day 4. I sat and forced myself to be calm. I pulled the little Gideon's Bible out of my pack and read the 91st Psalm, and then I read it again. It helped me to gather myself. Feeling more at peace, I headed towards Alpha location.
Six hours ago, everything went dark. No communication, no cars, nothing. Move according to prior instruction to location Foxtrot. I have verified that caches number 1 and number 2 along route Alpha Foxtrot are secure. We'll look for everyone there. Take your time and arrive safe. Rick.
I arrived 3 days after the event with James and the boys. We are all well. We crossed the ridge just west of Oaks Landing and could see massive amounts of smoke in Clarkstown. Dozens of the cars on the interstate were burning also. The mountain bikes are holding up well, only 2 flat tires so far, but both were repairable. We've seen nobody on the trails except for a few couples out backpacking who had no idea that anything had happened. I'm leaving this note at dawn on day 4, just as we are leaving. See you guys soon. Amanda, James, David, and Jeffrey Bridges.
By my count, I'm here at noon on day 4, just a few hours behind the bridges. I was on the wrong side of Clarkstown when everything went down. Made it home before sundown, changed the points and condensers on the old truck. Got the 4-wheeler running with spare parts I keep in the Faraday cage. Bugout bag, plenty of food, and all loaded up by 2 a.m., I'm guessing. Got pretty far until I ran into all the dead cars. Packed up what I could onto the 4-wheeler. Should catch up with the others soon. Robert the Bear Robertson.
Here on day 6. Seems I'm in the middle of the convoy. Doing all right on supplies. Anyone that arrives after me about a half-mile down Route 47 is a stalled and abandoned bakery truck. It's filled with plastic-wrapped cinnamon rolls and pies and snacks. I can't believe it hasn't already been emptied. I also can't believe how many cinnamon rolls I ate. See you at Foxtrot, Ed.
Bugout bags. What are they? Why do preppers have them? What goes into them? Today we're going to answer those questions. We're going to show you a bugout bag. I'm going to show you several. We're going to show you vehicle kits, survival kits, carry bags, all the things that you might need during an emergency or crisis, the things that you want on your person, in your vehicle, at your home, or on the job site that you'll want close at hand that you can deploy immediately. We're going to get into bugout bags, but we're not going to look at them first. First, we're going to look at a get-home kit. This stays in my vehicle, and there's several compartments to it, several sections. First, a quality survival kit. Compact, essential things, not everything you'd want to stay comfortable, but just enough to get by. It's light and it's easy to deal with. In our part of the country, we have several chemical factories. If they have an accident, it will be a tremendous priority to have a quality gas mask readily available that I can access in under a minute. So this stays in the vehicle, very close at hand. Quality first aid kit. You have to be very familiar with its contents, quickly able to deploy them. There's lots of times that you'll find an accident, a crisis, something that's happening to someone else that doesn't directly affect you, but you need to have the first aid kit to help that person. So this is going to be included in our kit. It lives in the vehicle and it's part of our get home bag because it's so important. We're going to include clothing relative to where we live. This is a Frog Tog rain suit. It works really well. It keeps out the rain. It helps keep you warm. It's okay in the summer. It's great in the winter. We're going to make sure we keep quality footwear and clothing, extra pants, a good shirt, a good hat. If you're stuck in an office job, you don't want to have to walk home, walk for miles or days in your dress clothes. That's not going to work. You got to have something tough, durable, and comfortable. In this kit, we're also going to include a good radio. It picks up AM, FM, shortwave, whatever you can find. You want to be able to stay abreast of the situation while you're walking. You don't want to have to rely on what's in your car. You need something small and portable. We're going to keep plenty to drink. Several bottles of your favorite beverage, Gatorade, Powerade, something. You got to have plenty to drink because you might have a long way to get home. And last of all, the bugout bag. It helps you get away, but it can help you get back home. Very important. And we're going to go into detail on this next. Now we're going to get into the bugout bag, the meat and potatoes of what we're carrying. This is where most of our gear lives. It's the heaviest, it's the bulkiest. It needs to be the strongest, and it needs to be as light as you can make it. If you're going to have to carry this thing all day or multiple days, you don't want it dragging you down. This one's about 10 pounds full. Not too bad. You can get them a lot bigger, so big that you can't walk up anything. And you can make it so small that nothing useful fits in it. So try and get a good size, make sure it's durable, sturdy, not something flimsy that's going to fall apart. Practice with it a little bit, make sure if there's any defects in it, you find them out and you fix them. On this one, there was one of these little latches was no good, and I had to deal with that. But now everything has been tried for months. It works great. You want to make sure you've got plenty of compartments so you can split up your gear. If you've seen the huge military rucksacks with one giant empty pocket, you put all your stuff in there, whatever you need, you're not going to find it. So you want to make sure you can get to what you need quickly and easily. Let's get into this one a little bit. We're going to start in this outermost compartment. Around here, if you're having to hike at home, you need plenty of bug spray. Notice I'm keeping this in a Ziploc bag. If it leaks out, it makes everything kind of sticky and nasty, so you protect it some. I've included some pain relief. You're not going to have much caffeine, you're going to be exerting yourself, you might get sore, you might have a headache, so you want to be able to deal with that. You don't need that dragging you down. Bite and sting kit. You get bit by a snake, you get stung by something, whatever, you want to be able to deal with this. It's hard enough having to walk all the way home for a day, 2 days, 3 days. The last thing you want to have to deal with is wondering whether or not that snake was poisonous or not. You want to be able to make sure you can get the venom out. Spare magazine. This accompanies the handgun that lives in the center console of the vehicle. Chambered to 9mm, it's a good place to keep a spare in case I don't have time to rummage around and get some other firearm. I've got something ready to go. Write in the rain, pen and paper. You can completely submerge this stuff and it still works just fine. You might have to take some notes. What happened? What did you see? What was going on? If you need to report this later, you want to have your facts straight. If something interesting happened, you want to be able to write it down. Good stuff to have. And a little backup snakebite kit. It weighs next to nothing. Why not have a spare? Next compartment. Again, in a Ziploc bag, a gun cleaning kit. A little bit of fabric, a bore snake. This one happens to be chambered in 7.62 by 3.9, so it'll work for a lot of different calibers. I use this as a patrol bag. The rifle that accompanies this normally is an AK-47 type weapon, so this is perfect. And I've included a little bit of cleaning and lubricating oil. Again, this isn't leaking for now. It could. It lives in a Ziploc bag. Next compartment. You can see why these compartments are helping. This stuff would get a giant mess if it was just all in one big open thing. Toilet paper, you'll want that. I guarantee it. Trash bags. You may have to collect some water. You may want an extra means to keep water off of something. You may need to carry something else. Whatever, trash bags, contractor grade, very tough, very useful, and they weigh next to nothing. Of course, we'll have a good survival knife, very simple, fixed blade, very sturdy. This is a Spec Plus brand. They make very tough knives, but not too costly. You're having to hike a long way home. You may or may not know what is ahead, who's up there, who's not there, is there danger, is there not. So let's include some quality binoculars. Now these are going to cost you. Good binoculars are usually large. Good binoculars that are small are expensive, but these work really, really well. Yeah, you could bring a giant set of binoculars, but you don't want that extra weight. But you will be able to see what's up ahead of you or behind you. Next, we're going to include a way to start a fire. This is a flint and steel. This is by Strike Force. I've had this one for over 20 years and it still works great, but there's a lot of options out there in the market. Make sure you include a couple of alcohol cubes. These are something you light with the sparks off your Strike Force, and you can get a good solid blue flame going for several minutes. That gives you plenty of time to start your campfire. And last, of course, just a regular spare lighter. This gives us multiple ways to start our fire. Next compartment. We're going to include a quality long sleeve shirt. Now this bag is packed, this kit is packed for summer weather, but it can still get down to 50 degrees at night. It'd be nice to have a long sleeve shirt. If nothing else, it's camouflaged, it'll help me blend in a little bit if I didn't want to be seen. Also, a spare canister for the gas mask. It could take several days for me to walk home, and that could be several days stuck in ammonia or some other chemical from the chemical plant that's not too far from where I have to work. You gotta have a spare if it's something like that that's important. Next, there's some food and rations in here. These bars were made to keep on ships. They last for years. They have a very high fat content. Each one of these is 2,400 calories. They taste okay. They're not so wonderful that you would snack on them at home, but they're certainly not terrible. I think I've got a coconut and a lemon bar. Anyway, these are approved by the U.S. Coast Guard. They keep for a long time, and they'll keep you going all the way home. Very, very calorie dense. Next, we're going to have a good sports drink. You're going to be stressed the first few hours. You're going to have a lot to do. You want something that's going to keep you going. Not really a soft drink, not something that's going to make you thirsty, but something that's going to be exactly what you want. If you're working out, running, if you have to sprint, you're going to want to recharge. So keep a good sports drink. The bottle you're not going to toss. Once you're done with it, you're going to keep this and refill it with water the first chance you get. Spare socks. your feet get wet, you're gonna be miserable. In the summertime, it's bad enough. If you have to bug out or get back home in the middle of winter and your feet get wet, you've got a real problem and it can be dangerous. Next in the bag, I keep a washcloth and a towel. Once you've been out for a day, 2 days, 3 days, you're not even going to feel human anymore. You're going to want to be able to wash your face, wash the bug spray off for a few minutes, get cleaned up, feel human again, and then keep on going. You don't have to have it, but it doesn't really weigh anything, so put it in there. I keep a spare box of shells. This is for the 9mm. This is what lives in the center console of the vehicle. It gets grabbed when the get home kit is used. So, spare ammunition for that gun. Quality gloves. This is not the cheap dollar store $1 gloves. This is the good stuff. You can feel your gun, you can use your equipment, you've still got good dexterity, but it's going to protect your fingers, it's going to keep you warm if it's cold. You want to have really, really good gloves. Don't skimp on this. A big spool of paracord. You know there's 1,001 uses for this. It's good stuff. Don't just get some twine, get 550 paracord. And make sure it's green or black or something that's going to blend in. Leave the neon orange stuff at home, or leave it for the teenagers, but get some of this and put it in the bag. Last compartment is going to have your water bladder in it. We leave this empty for a reason. You fill it up with tap water, even if you fill it up with bottled water, it's going to start to go stale. It's not going to be what you want to keep stored for weeks or months in your bag. So you keep it empty, you get to a water source, you fill it up, and then you purify it while you're on the go. Last of all, your individual first aid kit. Note the red string. Red string means, hey, there's first aid supplies here. This is important. But if you go into this bag, you know you've got a real serious situation. Now notice this is attached along the molly strips so it doesn't fall off. On the subject, make sure your bag has molly strips because you might want to put other stuff on it. Back to the first aid. You can see it's tethered so you don't lose it. You get hurt really, really bad and you have to use this stuff on yourself, you're going to be going into shock. You're going to have a hard time, so you don't want this dropping and falling away somewhere. On the outside is a tourniquet, something of last resort. On the inside, gauze, tape, an Israeli bandage, another tool to keep nasal passages open, more gloves, and of course decompression needles. If you don't know how to use any of these things, don't take them, because this is stuff that you can seriously hurt or kill somebody with if you apply it improperly. So if you use this kind of stuff, make sure you get training on exactly what to do with it before you even put it around your bag. This completes our Bugout bag. You can see it's well-rounded. It's useful for a variety of situations. It shouldn't take a whole lot of effort to custom tailor one, using this as a starting point to get exactly what you need. We're going to take a break from Bugout bags for just a couple of minutes. We're going to skip over to a survival kit. This one is in a belt, but you can put it in a small pack, something easily detachable, something you can carry with you. The point is, your survival kit is very lightweight, and it's got a lot of useful things that don't take up a lot of room. This one starts with what's called a rigger's belt, and then you've got a belt padding that goes inside. This is a 511 brand with an elite rigger's belt. There's a lot of options out there. This goes over your normal belt. If you take a close look, a lot of policemen will carry something like this, and they'll have their handcuffs and gear on it. On one end, I've chosen a PMR 30 by Keltec. It's extremely lightweight. One pistol, 2 loaded magazines. It weighs the same as 1 loaded AR-15 magazine. Extremely lightweight. It holds 30 rounds of .22 Magnum. I've got a lot of coyotes between where I live and where I work if I were have to move through the wilderness. So this gives me a lot to deal with packs of wild animals. The .22 Magnum is still a fairly powerful cartridge, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in our security DVD. But this is something that's easy to deal with. Of course, you can see in the holster, there's room for a fourth magazine, one in the pistol, two over here on the side with one on that side. This is a lot of firepower in next to no weight. That's 120 rounds of ammunition, and it weighs almost nothing. Now, in this little kit by itself, you'll notice again our red string. That means there is first aid supplies inside this pack. Let's see if we can find them. No. Here, inside our Ziploc bag, a headlight with spare batteries. You're trying to navigate, it's dark, you need to be able to see. This one, of course, can project a red light, so you're not going to really give yourself away and navigate after dark if you need to. Over here, we're going to have a lensatic compass. If you have to figure out where you are, where you're going, if you get a little bit out of sorts, particularly if it's a cloudy day, you got to be able to get your bearings. Our first aid kit. Another Israeli bandage. They're good. You can use them as a tourniquet. You can put them on a limb. They'll put pressure on a wound, and then you can wrap it, and it will hold that pressure for you. So you're not having to apply pressure constantly. You're free to use your hands for whatever else you need. These stay put. Very, very good first aid item. Next, in a Ziploc bag, I've got another mini first aid kit. There's antibiotics, a couple different pieces of gauze, a couple different band-aids, some antihistamine in case I get stung or bit by bees, spiders, whatever. What you want to do, you'll make 2 or 3 of these at once. You will buy several boxes of the various bandages, tapes, gauze, supplies, and then split them into groups. And then make small first aid kits for your bag, your wife's bag, your kid's bag, whatever you need. So this is all together in the Ziploc pouch. Also included in that, some good clothing shears. If you need to cut something away from someone, you'll want to buy some good first aid shears, and they'll slip in there quite readily. Next, as you delve a little bit deeper, you might have noticed something that was missing from the Bugout bag, but we've included in this one. This is water purification tablets. You'll notice one to purify the water, the other to remove the horrible taste of water purification tablets. This goes in this bag because this bag is the one you keep no matter what. If you have to ditch the Bugout bag for whatever reason, you'll keep your water purification. But normally you've drank everything out of your sports drink and you're ready to fill that back up with, say, creek water or river water. You're going to put these in your sports drink bottle. You're also going to fill out your water bladder, and you're going to put more of these in here. And this is how you've got clean water. And while you're there, you're going to drink your fill with a life straw or a Cadden water filter. Some means that there's lots of them out there, but you're going to want to be able to drink everything you can right there. This is good for that. They are very inexpensive, they're very useful. You always want to keep several of these. There's one in all of our bags for survival kits. Occlusive gauze strips. This is more of a first aid kit. This is something that you might use if you get burned. Again, learn up on your first aid before you put it in the bag. If you don't know what this is for, you'll probably just waste it. An emergency blanket. You can use this. They're not quite as strong as our garbage bags, but they are good to hold heat in. They're reflective, and they cost next to nothing. They take up no weight whatsoever. We're going to have, again, another way to start fire here in the survival kit. 2 lighters. In here we're also going to keep a multi-tool. I've had this one for years. It works. It does its job quite well. No reason to get the gigantic, huge ones. Just something simple, but don't go cheap. Cheap breaks, waste of time. So get something good. Of course, we're going to include a good folding knife. This one's by Schrade. I like it. It's very sharp, very tough. Had it for several years. And of course, my favorite, the solar-powered flashlight. No, I'm not joking. This is a great survival flashlight. It's got a small solar cell. While you're walking during the day, you've got this hanging off your shoulder on your pack or whatever, and it's charging up. It's got a small rechargeable battery in it. That way at night, you've got a small light that goes for days and days and days. There's also a small watch battery in here. If you had a couple of cloudy days, you're still going to have a little bit of light to navigate in the dark. As you can see, not a lot of stuff. Very light, easy to carry, but stuff that you would not want to go without if you're going to have to go for several days out in the wilderness. Now let's see how this compares back to some of our other bug-out bags. Okay, last word on our bug-out bags. This is my wife's and my daughter's bug-out bags. Now, this is not her get-home bag. That's in her vehicle. This is her bug-out bag. She also takes it hiking. It's got very, very similar equipment as my bug-out bag. Key difference is there's not a spare magazine because she would carry that pistol in her holster on her hip. Also, the rifle kit is chambered for a 5.56 because she carries an AR-15, not an AK. Other than that, it's the same. My little girl does not carry a rifle. She has no pistol, and it does include a very, very loud whistle. She takes this when we go hiking, and if she got lost in the woods, this will be heard for a long, long way. Other than that, she carries the same first aid, she carries the same drinks, the same food. The only difference is neither of them have the IFAC first aid kit because of the training required and the potential to hurt somebody. So they have a very basic first aid kit. Other than that, these work exactly the same as the others. Next, we're going to talk about carry bags. This is the bare minimum essential equipment that you'll want in an immediate crisis. The carry bag, again, compartmentalized, just like your bug-out bag. So you put things where you want them to be. Obviously, you'll keep a folding knife, a quality flashlight, pens, pencils. Right up against your person, you're going to be able to carry a full-frame handgun. Of course, check with your local laws. If you need a carry permit, make sure you're doing that. You don't want to get in trouble, but this is a great way to carry it. It's a lot less obvious than a holster. It's much more comfortable, and you've got plenty of room for a spare magazine. If you don't like that, you can go to a carry vest. This is going to be somewhat comfortable. They're not as useful in the summer. They get hot, but you can put your handgun inside a compartment. You can put your spare magazines, flashlights, any other essential gear you want in here. I have a relative that keeps an EpiPen in his carry bag just because he has a son with a severe allergy. Very useful for this. And again, he's got a red tag on that one just because it's important. Either one of these will work great. Like I said, I prefer the carry bag. It's a little bit more convenient. When you get into your vehicle, you can set it in the seat. The vest is a little bit more difficult to deal with. So find out what works for you, but this is definitely an everyday, everywhere carry item. Now I want to talk about vehicle kits, the things that live in your primary mode of transportation. We're going to start with the stuff that you keep within arm's reach of where you're driving from the driver's seat. We're going to start with a seatbelt cutter. This clips inside your door, right down there in that little pocket. If you have an accident, if you find someone else who has had an accident and the vehicle catches fire, or there's other immediate, imminent danger, you want to be able to slice that seatbelt and get you or the other person out immediately. A pocket knife will do it, but it takes a lot longer. This just whack and they're gone. Second, we're going to have a gas and water shut-off tool. This isn't necessarily limited to an automobile, although you could bust out a window with it, but if you see a building that has smoke coming out, you find something that's getting ready to be a serious fire, it's really, really nice if you can go and shut off the gas or the water or extricate someone who might be trapped. This is a non-sparking material. They work very well. They're very inexpensive. They're light. You can keep them in your glove box, the center console, somewhere within arm's reach. We're going to keep a quality flashlight in the driver's door or within arm's reach. You may have an accident at night. You may find someone else who has had an accident at night. You can't rely on your headlights to be pointed in the direction that you need to see. So keep this handy, keep the batteries charged up. Next, we're going to go to our vehicle tote. This is going to live in the back of the vehicle, in the trunk or the cargo area of your SUV. I keep my get home kit here. This is right next to it, and they're both bungeed in place, so they're not sliding around making noise, but they're nice and secure. First, we're going to have a quality lantern in there. Your flashlight is good. Sometimes you need something that disperses more light. You may need this to set it on the road to warn another vehicle that, hey, something is going on here. And again, we're going to check our batteries and replace them about twice a year. Incidentally, when you get out your Bugout bag, you're going to change your clothing out at least twice a year, so that you put your summer clothing in, put your winter clothing in, whatever you need. While you're changing out your water, your food, change the batteries out in your lantern. We're going to keep some high visibility vests or other clothing handy. If there's an accident and you're trying to assist, direct traffic, do whatever, you want to make sure you can be seen. The last thing you want to have happen is you get hit by another driver when you're trying to help someone. I like to keep some good nitrile gloves. That way, if I have to change a flat tire, help someone out, we're trying to get somewhere, you don't show up when you're all filthy and nasty. Not exactly a survival item, but really useful to have in your vehicle kit. We're also going to keep plenty of cordage, some ropes, some bungee cords, and some tie-down ropes. There's plenty of times I've been moving something on a trailer, helping someone else move something on a trailer, or need to drag something out of the road. You want to have plenty of means to secure objects, move objects, lash objects down. We're also going to keep some good sturdy leather gloves. These are not very expensive, and these are not the same kind of gloves that go in your Bugout bag. These are cheap, they're really rugged. You won't have a lot of dexterity with them, but if you're pulling tree limbs, trying to pull busted sheet metal out to move a vehicle, something like that, you want extra sturdy, extra tough to protect your hands. And they're dirt cheap. Keep some of those in there. If your vehicle has a trailer hitch, I recommend keeping that in the vehicle kit. It prevents it from getting stolen, it keeps it from rusting in place in the receiver, and it also saves your shin, because you will find this with your shin. Trust me, I know. Along with your receiver hitch, we're going to keep several spare balls. Your trailer might take this one, someone else's might take a different one. If you have several options available that you can switch out the balls onto the receiver hitch, you're in good shape. We're going to keep a small inverter in the kit. This can recharge batteries, radios, communication equipment, whatever you might need that takes a 110, as well as alligator clips and the means to hook it up to your vehicle battery. You don't want to have to rely just on the cigarette lighter, but you want to be able to hook it with the alligator clips directly to your vehicle battery, so you can pull a lot more juice if you need to. We're going to keep a good air compressor in here. If you have a flat tire or a tire that gets low, you want to be able to pump that back up. And to that end, you'll also keep a good tire repair kit. Now, a plug is not a permanent solution, but is a much better solution than the aerosol cans of Fix-A-Flat. That stuff does not work very well. Often it doesn't work at all, unless it's a very, very tiny leak. This will deal with nails, larger branches, bones. I've seen a lot of stuff go into a tire, and that aerosol stuff doesn't work near as good as a glued rubber plug. You can use some pliers to pull out the debris, put this in, and then pump the tire back up, and you're in a lot better shape. We're going to keep the tools on hand to swap out the balls on the receiver hitch. And of course, you will also have another first aid kit with your vehicle kit. There's lots of times you might have someone who's got a minor injury, something that's not life-threatening, but you're still going to want to fix them up a little bit. There's no reason to have to pull out your entire bug-out kit, show them what you're doing, and use your IFAC kit or anything like that, when this will do just fine. There's plenty of opportunity where just a very modest, easy first aid kit will be all you really need. If it's a real emergency and you need to pull out the tourniquet or something like that from your bug-out bag, okay, fine. But it's really convenient to have something much simpler. This stuff is much less intimidating. There's no reason to expose all your gear in your vehicle when you can just do something simple. Also, you note that there are no jumper cables here. Jumper cables are used probably more often than any of this stuff. So for that reason, I keep them in a separate compartment in the back of the vehicle. If I need jumper cables, I can grab them and just them. I don't have to unpack this stuff. I don't have to unpack my bug-out bag. They're extra handy. Usually you're jumping off someone else because you're prepared. You're keeping your vehicle in good shape, aren't you? You don't have a dead battery, but you're helping out other people. So keep the jumper cables in a separate spot. Well, you've seen a lot of different kinds of kits. Bug-out kits, get-home kits, survival kits, vehicle kits. What I want you to do next is consider everything that you've seen here. Make it work for you. You may have noticed that when we had the little girl and the wife's bug-out bags, they didn't have their own survival kit. It was built into those bags. They were still fairly light. You saw the vehicle kit. There was a lot of different equipment there. Make that your template. Use the things that you know how to make work and leave the rest of it out. If you're better at mechanical things, add more stuff. If you want to put a winch on your vehicle, things like that, go for it. We're going to get into more vehicle specifics in our vehicle DVD. But for now, use all these things as your template. Make it work for your climate, your terrain, your physical abilities. You're going to change out the details at least twice a year. You're going to get your winter clothes. You're going to check your batteries. You're going to swap out your drink. You're going to swap out your food. Use that time to really do an inventory and think, I don't really know how to use this equipment. I need to learn how. Or this equipment's not very good quality. I'll find something better. Or I really wish I had one of these, and I'll put it in there. Find a place to use all these templates that you saw today and get something that works just for you. I'll give you an example. ATVs. A good thing to have would be a pair of bolt cutters, maybe an axe. Around here, there's a lot of old cow fields, places that don't even have animals anymore, but there's woods with barbed wire strung through them. If you had an emergency and you had to get your ATV through this terrain, you'd need the bolt cutters to get rid of spots of old fence to get through. Maybe the axe to bust up a log, build a shelter, things like that. So the axe, the bolt cutters, those go in your ATV, along with some milk crates, maybe some spare gas. All these things take a little bit of preparation, a little bit of thought. Just use common sense. What works for you? What can you put on there? What can you use? And then what would be a waste of time and just weigh you down? Just use your own noggin. You can do it. So, be the ant, not the grasshopper.
Hi, I'm Clayton Van Huss. I'm the producer of this video. I'm also a prepper, and we've just received a wealth of information on bug-out bags, get-home kits, vehicle kits, and I, like you, I'm sure have a few questions I'd like to ask Dale, maybe get a few things explained for the layperson. Dale, the number one question that I want to ask you is, how do you answer someone who looks at you and says, as a Christian prepper, are you showing a lack of faith in God?
I see that question a lot. I hear variations on that question. It is a very easy question to ask. It is a very easy question to answer. The answer is very difficult, especially if you're the one asking the question. Well, what do you mean? I mean, it's just this stuff. It shows that you just don't care. You're not trusting in God, etc. In our country, in our nation, we've not had a war. We've not had a nationwide catastrophe in over 100 years. We have a large cultural normalcy bias. We can look at our lives, our parents' lives, and think, well, it was like this, and now it's like this, and it'll always be like this. We have to make sure that we're not putting our faith in normalcy bias and mistaking it for saying that we will have faith in God, because it's two completely different things. I have a fire extinguisher. I have fire insurance on my home. I don't expect to use either one of them today or tomorrow or next week, but they're there, and odds are the people that ask this question also have a fire extinguisher, and they also have fire insurance. But that's socially normal. It's cultural. Yeah, everyone has that stuff. Prepping for an emergency, a crisis, some national disaster, it's the same exact mindset as having fire insurance on your house, but you're broadening what you see as potential threats to what's going on around you. The exact same thing. We can talk about this some more later. I think we've got some questions that might answer that also.
Sure, and I don't mean this as a blanket statement altogether, but I find that oftentimes when posed with something difficult and someone says, "Oh, just have faith in God," it's simply laziness.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to fall into that mental trap.
Right. Okay, well, let me ask you this, kind of piggybacking off that. Are there any biblical examples of prepping or commands in the Bible to prepare?
Sure. Probably your top three are going to be Nehemiah, Joseph, and Noah. Noah, obviously, it's a great story, direct commandment of God. It's not raining now, but build this boat, all this stuff, great. Nehemiah is a little bit more interesting because not only is he preparing, but he's also dealing with security. He has set a watch. He has enemies that are attacking him. His story is much more interesting. And then Joseph, I think, gets back to the faith issue. He says we're going to have 7 years of plenty. We're going to have 7 years of famine. Joseph could have said, you know what? I have faith. We will enjoy the 7 years of plenty, and when the 7 years of famine gets here, God will take care of it. Don't do anything. Just live it up now, and when the tough times get here, it'll be fine. Don't do a thing, because God will take care of it. You can sit on your sofa at home, open your mouth, and wait for apple pie to fly through the air and into your jaws. God can make it happen, but it makes a little bit more sense to go to work, get a job, and just go buy the apple pie. Both of them work.
Right, and it doesn't mean God's not providing because you're out there working.
Yeah, there's a difference between faith and using what God has provided you, mostly your noggin.
Yeah, okay. Now, America, and as Americans, we understand that we've always been prosperous. We've always been safe. Mm-hmm. Now, what makes you think that prepping is even necessary with the infrastructure we have?
Okay, this is a big topic. We know that as you increase the complicated nature of a machine, that anything that damages that machine damages it in more and more severe ways. Take, for example, a car. You can tear it up just a little bit and render the whole thing completely useless. A simpler machine like this folding table, you can beat it up quite a bit and it's difficult to damage the table, right? Okay, so we have this nation that's very complicated. Just-in-time delivery, a very complex economic system, a power grid, all these things that make things very specific. They do very specific jobs. They require people with very specific skill sets to maintain it. You tear up a little bit of this and the ripple effect can be tremendous. So, as we get more and more complicated, the potential for bigger problems that are more widespread can become very pronounced. Compared to a third world nation, they could have a real catastrophe and half the country might not know the difference.
And that's absolutely true. I've spent a little time doing missions work in Honduras, and I've seen where the people get by with far less than we do because they always have. They've never been as prosperous as we are, so they've never fallen the distance that we can fall.
There were people alive in Honduras during the war between the states, both World War I World War II, the Cold War, a lot of the people in Honduras, would they have known or cared about any of that stuff?
No, it wouldn't faze them because it doesn't touch them.
A good example of a simple society that doesn't need all that detail to get by. And now, think of our country compared to what it was 100 years ago or 200 years ago. We have a lot that requires our attention. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of very, very specific infrastructure for us to live the lifestyle that we have. Take away a chunk of that, take away the internet. This has only been around for a couple decades. You take away just the internet and what happens to our infrastructure. We have a real mess. We'd have to have a lot of workarounds to keep it going. Or take away the power grid. Or take away even modern medicine. We live very close to a major heart center. You take that away, and this part of the country all of a sudden has a tremendous number of fatalities because all of a sudden people that would normally survive a heart attack or undergo heart surgery that is, successful. Okay, now we have a big hole in the community because you just take out that one piece of infrastructure. So you see where we have a danger there.
Wow. Okay. My next question might be splitting hairs, but what is the difference between a prepper and a survivalist?
About 10 years.
Okay.
A survivalist is what they were called in the 80s and the 90s. Before that, they were called retreatists in the 70s. Prepper is a little bit more of a term that came about in the last decade or so. But in the common vernacular, a survivalist, you will usually see the connotation of they are a lone wolf. It's a hermit.
Right.
Or one family. Or just someone who's trying to remove themselves from a lot of modern society. A prepper is someone who generally, it's their family, it's their friends, it's a small community, it's people who are actively involved, and they're much more proactive and much more working in terms of working together with other people. Really, the terms are interchangeable. They're almost synonymous, but you will see prepper in favor of survivalist. Survivalist had a little bit of a negative connotation. Prepper anymore is becoming much more mainstream, so you don't see that negative, ooh, that guy's a weirdo, when you think about preppers, because people see it as more of just an extension of their fire extinguisher and their life insurance and et cetera.
Okay, that's very interesting, especially when you think about, every so often that name changes. And you think about during the Depression, they were called people because everybody had to do some prepping, back in those days. Now, Dale, there is so much information that you have presented here for us today. This can be a little bit overwhelming, especially for the beginners. The question is, where do I even start with this stuff?
Okay. Find the common denominator. What are you trying to prepare for? What's the time frame? And as soon as you can identify the exact problem or the most likely problem or the similarities, you go from there. Begin with picking out a 72-hour period. I want to get by for that long. Once you have everything you might need to get by for 72 hours, make it a week. And then expand it until you have a month. And then you're ready to take on a year. Because you're only changing things very slightly. And you take it in little bites. You're going to eat this elephant one bite at a time and go from there.
Okay, so it's simple, baby steps.
Right.
Okay, well, our next question is there any one item that I need to make sure I have more than anything else? Is there a number one priority thing to get?
The most important tool of any prepper is their brain. You think about things, do not make rash decisions. You can't be an impulsive spender. You can't just flip open a magazine and say, oh, I gotta have one of those. Just like if you wanted to buy a car, you would think about very carefully, what are my needs? How many people do I need to carry? What do I need to carry? What am I going to do with it? Then you go buy your car. Just like buying that car, preppers need to think very carefully. Again, get into this habit. If you have an emergency, if you have a crisis, if you can spend 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 15 minutes stop, think about it, then decide what to do. People get lost in the woods, and they don't stop, they don't think, they panic and they run because they think they're going to get unlost if they go faster. And that's a huge mistake. If you get lost in the woods, you stop, you think about it, you take stock of your resources, you think about where you were and where you're trying to get to, and after you've spent 15 minutes calming down and making sure you're taking the right action, then you act. Now sometimes you can't spend 15 minutes. If there's a house on fire, if there's a car wreck, if someone's seriously injured, you have to act. But if you have time, stop and think. Decide on the best course of action, then begin to do something. And it's the same thing with prepping. What do I really need? If my budget is $100 this week, well, let's think about it very carefully. My wife and I, we keep a list of things to buy and a list of things to do. If I see something that really strikes my fancy, oh man, I love that gadget, I gotta get it. I don't go buy it, I put it on the list. And then, after a couple weeks go by, and I've crossed this off the list, and I've got one of these, and I've done that, we'll go back and I'll say, now, honey, we've got these things, and I've added a couple to the list. Is this thing more important than this? Which one should we prioritize? And we'll talk about it, and then we'll decide. A lot of times, if you just go out and buy whatever it is, a week later you think, I was saving up for this other thing that is much more important, and I wish I had that instead. You don't want to have buyer's remorse when you're prepping. With your money, with your time, you think, okay, well, I got the shop cleaned out, and then you think, I forgot the roof was leaking, I was supposed to fix that first. You can't get that time back, and you need that common sense. You need to be slow and methodical with your prepping, with your expenses, with everything. So the most important tool is a slow, methodical, common sense frame of mind.
Okay, so a little wisdom and a little temperance go a long way. Okay, excellent. So what sorts of disasters should I be worried about?
Okay, this question covers a huge spectrum of topics. People are concerned about nuclear war, EMP, disease, famine, economic collapse, martial law, war, civil war, racial unrest, everything. It doesn't matter. The common denominator of all of these topics are almost all the same. You have to have something to drink, you have to have something to eat, you have to have someplace secure where you can sleep. Once you have those topics covered, you have dealt with the biggest part of the problem for most of this spectrum. You'll cover the first 90% of everything, and then that last 10% will be dealing with the specifics of each topic. We saw the gas mask in my Bugout Bag. For a lot of people, if they're not living anywhere near a chemical factory or something similar to that, that gas mask is meaningless. Where I live, that is one of those 10% things that makes the difference just for me. If I was living 100 miles south of here, I probably wouldn't need that nearly as much as where I live now.
So basically you can take like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, shelter, all that sort of thing, apply it to your situation where you live, what your climate is like, and sort it that way to kind of figure what you're prepping for.
Right. If you pick one at random, nuclear war. All right, I'm going to prep for nuclear war, and I'm going to have a decontamination suit, and I'm going to have a Geiger counter and gas mask and all this stuff. You're going to focus on a lot of things that eat up your budget, and you can very quickly miss out on some of the basic things because you're focused in on nuclear war.
Right.
And if you're focused in on nuclear war, and then instead the problem is economic collapse, well, all of a sudden the Geiger counter is worthless. The decontamination suit is no real help. So think about covering the broadest possible spectrum first, then go in and pick up the details as you can.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, a lot of us are on a budget. I know I am myself. Is it better to go ahead and get a whole bunch of stuff that you think you might need and find the cheapest stuff you can get, or is it better to take your time and get the highest quality items that you can afford over a period of time?
Both.
Okay.
A lot of things, quality is not really going to vary a whole lot. If you go out and buy a bunch of matches, it's matches. If you're going to go out and buy a bunch of old surplus blankets, pillows, things like that, there's no need to go out and blow your budget getting premium, air mattress with all the memory foam and stuff, if this is your spare mattress for people who might bug out to your house. Okay, in that instance, it doesn't matter. But now, sometimes quality really, really matters. When you go to pick out your firearm, when you go to pick out your knife, if you're choosing a backpack, you don't just go get the $5, on sale at the dollar store backpack. If that's all you can get, okay, fine. But it really, really makes a difference if you get quality the first time. Boots especially. I can't stand it when I end up with boots that don't meet my expectations. You can go to the big box store and get $25 boots, and you will be miserable long before those boots are wore out.
Right.
Okay. One of my very first survival instructors had a knife, and he carried that knife for years. He probably still has that knife. Now, I took my first survival course when I was 13 years old. At the time, the knife was probably a $200 knife. It was really, really special. It never wore out. He never tore it up. He had an underwater camera before we had digital cameras. He still has that camera. It still works great because he got a really, really good camera. He got a really, really good survival knife. He had other gear that it lasted forever. And you see all these people, they'll bring in stuff and they'll come to training sessions and they'll have this junk. Here's my $10 knife that I got at the flea market. Yeah, maybe it'll make it through the weekend. But if I need that knife to get me through the woods, to get me through a real crisis, I don't want to put my life in the hands of a $10 flea market knife. So if it's important, if you're only going to have one, get something that's quality. The rule of threes applies here too. You have 3 sources. You have 3 ways to cut something. That doesn't mean you get 3 cheap knives. It means you get a good knife. It means you get a good chainsaw. I can't afford 3 chainsaws, so I bought a good one. When I pick out my ATV, I tried to get something that was tough, that was going to last. Same thing with boots. I only have so many pairs of boots, and they are all good boots. If I find boots that are junk, I get rid of them. I want to find out that, today's the day everything goes all to pot. Today's the day I'm going to have to walk a long journey, and today's the day I wore my $25 big box boots. No.
Okay. Well, that actually leads into our next question. How do I know if the item I'm buying is a quality item or if it's junk?
Okay. If you're getting something online, which is, again, a more recent technology people didn't used to have, go and look at the reviews. If 100 people say this is the best thing since sliced bread, great. But a lot of times you look at something and you think, that thing's awesome. I'm going to buy it. And you look at the reviews and everyone says, well, it fell apart in the first 15 minutes that I used it, or it didn't fit, or it wasn't comfortable, or it wasn't sharp, it didn't do what it was supposed to do. No, you just saved yourself a pile of money because you didn't order it. Then look at price. If you're going to go look at an optic for a firearm, usually you will get what you pay for. Not always. Sometimes you can get something that's good quality and it doesn't cost that much. Sometimes you will spend a fortune on something that's not that great. But if you spend a lot more money on something, you will usually find you get much higher quality. If it's made in China and it costs 1/10 of the one that's made in Germany, maybe you should think about saving up for the one that's made in Germany. I have occasionally run into stuff from China that I think works pretty good, and it's a good bargain. Baofeng radios, for example. For what they do and as little as they cost, okay, I'll buy a couple of those. I still want to get some quality ham radio gear to supplement it, but if my budget is $40, okay, all right, I'll get one of those. So look around, do your homework, find out from other people. Hey, I'm looking to buy a knife. I need one to do this job or that job. What do you have and do you like it? And if someone says, yeah, this is great, I'd do anything with it, and I'd buy another one if I had to. Okay, good. And sometimes people say, well, I bought one of these and it was junk, and I bought one of these and it was junk, and I bought one of these and I threw it in the garbage. Okay, you've just saved yourself a fortune. Learn from other people's mistakes, look at the reviews, look at where it's made from. Is it coming from a company that has a reputation? If you're going to go out and buy a new scope for your rifle, there's the really, really high-end stuff that everybody knows. Oh, wow, well, that's German crystal, and it's worth a fortune. And, oh, well, this is the one that you get at Walmart for $10. Think about that kind of stuff.
So it's like, when I buy something online, I look at the reviews and the ratings, the stars, and then I also do a little bit of research on the product itself. So it's common sense, really.
The next thing, look at the era of technology that it comes from.
Okay.
If it's the brand new gadget, if it's the brand new thing, you might give it some time, but you might say, I need a grain mill. I want to grind up some of that wheat that's stored in the basement. Well, who's been around a long time? Who has been making this grain mill for 100 years? There's a reason they've been making that grain mill for 100 years. You can pick up the layman's catalog, and some of their stuff can be a little expensive, but you can find stuff in there, and they will tell you, this is the design that first appeared in 18 whatever or 19 whatever, and all we did was fire up the industry and start making new ones, and it's the same design. Okay, well, that's probably something worth buying. Look for stuff like that.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. Now, how do I know which items that I need for my climate and my geographical location? How do I pinpoint those things?
Practice. Go camping. Take that stuff with you. Use it. Does it work? It got too cold. My sleeping bag, when it got down to 40 degrees, I was miserable. Okay, now you know. But do things in a controlled environment. Do things where you can experiment. Get your gear and practice with it. Take it outside and do stuff with it. Make sure it works. My Bugout bag, like I said, it had that little defect in one zipper. Found that. Everything's good. No more problems. Find the little problems with your gear. Find out that, well, in this situation, this gear didn't work. It's too cold where I live, or there's too much rain. This doesn't keep me dry. You get outside, you work with this stuff, and you find the limitations of what you've got right now where it doesn't matter. Or when you're in a group, you're camping with 10 other friends, or you're hiking with a group of people, and if this new thing you got fails, if it turns out to not be what you expect, okay, it's not a big deal. Worst case scenario, your friends laugh at you for buying a crummy knife. Okay, now you go home and you get a better one. You don't want to find out in a crisis scenario, oh, half my gear is garbage. No, you get out and you practice with it now.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Now, of course, a lot of folks who are new to prepping, or even maybe who've been doing it for a little while, maybe they just discovered this video and they're going, hey, I need to do this. What kinds of resources are available to me as a prepper for research?
My DVDs.
Yes.
There is one resource currently available, as long as the internet holds, that bar none is vitally important. Go to survivalblog.com. Every topic you can imagine, categorized, easy to research, a huge volume of information. James Wesley Rawls is the grand poobah of survivalism. If the question has not been answered there already, submit your question yourself. Do the research, but most of the things, the very specific, how do I do this, how do I do that, you start there. If you can't find it there, you might have to do a little bit more research, but for my money, that is where you will find a huge amount of information in a very compact, very useful format.
I know he also has a lot of books out
He
that you
does.
can buy online. In fact, every Christmas I end up giving a copy of one of his books to at least somebody.
Yes, Rawls has put out a series of books. It's fiction, set in the near future of this economic collapse, and the stories, they go along dealing with what people are doing, how do they survive, how do they get by. But it's only about half a story. The other half of the book is a very detailed description of how they did exactly what they did, specifically what gear they were using in every little situation. So it's almost like an instruction manual with a story built around it. It's a very interesting style of writing, but it's very enlightening. And I recommend those books to everyone. I gave a complete collection of his works to my sister for Christmas last year. If you want a good Christmas present, get one of those books, get a silver dollar, tape it inside the cover. Great Christmas present for somebody.
Let's see. I haven't read any of his fiction.
Yeah.
So, wow. Now, no, we're not sitting here doing a commercial for this website, but don't you have some articles on there?
I do. I have a couple talking about dogs and nitrogen packing, some things like that. But it's the work of hundreds of people from all over the world. But yeah, he's not paying us to advertise for him, but it legitimately is a valuable resource.
Right. So a variety, a large number of counselors, you could say.
Yeah, and from him you can link off to all sorts of other good resources, but that's the place to start.
Okay. Now, for our final question, there's a lot going on here, and this can be very overwhelming for a beginner. How do I find prepper resources and support groups in my local area?
You do it the same as you would any other hobby. Start with your family. They're the ones that are the most likely to help you and the most likely to be interested in your best interests. Go from there. A lot of hiking clubs, shooting clubs, gun stores. Occasionally you'll even find somebody on Craigslist because they've got hobbies and things like that. You want to look for people who are doing the same sorts of things. We've put ads up on Facebook talking about this stuff, different people that have come and joined up with us to talk about the subject, trade ideas. I've ended up with a lot of good friends in the area just from the same casual interaction as if you had any other hobby, any other lifestyle. How do people who skydive get together? How do people who build remote control airplanes get together? They network. They talk at the stores where they're buying the supplies relevant to the hobby. They're getting on social media and they're looking for other groups in their area, stuff like that. But it's time consuming, and you can meet people that you don't really mesh with. You might go through several people and think, this guy's just, he's too far to the left or he's too far to the right, or we just don't get along. But you will find people eventually, wow, I really connect with this guy. This family over here really has it together, and our family gets, we get along well. Their kids play well with my kids, and they're great. And when it's time to can the vegetables, we're trading okra and tomatoes back and forth, and we're helping each other out. And you will find those people. It takes time, it takes a lot of work, but it's really, really worth it if you meet some of those people that, wow, this is exactly what we're looking for.
So there's a real prepper community out there. Mm-hmm. And you just want to be careful about, I guess, showing your whole hand until you assess someone.
Yeah, a lot of times it's fun to go out and meet at a neutral place. You get together with maybe a backpacking club, and you talk with some of these people over lunch. You get together at a gun show, and you haggle over gear and look at stuff together. We met some really great people from Knoxville at a gun show a couple months ago, and they were a really good resource, and we talked with them quite a bit. Didn't know them from Adam before the gun show, but now I've got a really good source on someone who can get first aid supplies, work together with us on training, a lot of things like that.
Well, that wraps up our question and answer session for this video. Hopefully, we were able to answer many of your questions. Feel free to check out our social media sites and our website as well to find more of those resources we were talking about and maybe answer some more questions.
Look for future videos on topics like homesteading, prepper groups, and survival vehicles.
And remember,
Bye.